The Confederacy of 12 Worlds had ruled the galaxy for 9,000 years. They were old. They were powerful. They believed they were better than everyone else. When humans first traveled to the stars, the Confederacy looked at them the way a giant looks at an ant. They saw nothing special. They saw nothing dangerous. They were wrong. The human colony world of New Geneva was a small planet on the edge of known space. 3 million people lived there. They were farmers, teachers, doctors, and builders. They wanted nothing but peace. But the Confederacy wanted something from them. They wanted tribute. They wanted money, resources, and obedience. New Geneva said no. High Arbiter Velkosh was the leader of the Confederacy's military council. He was very old and very cruel. When he heard that a human world had refused to pay tribute, he laughed. Then he sent the combined fleet to teach them a lesson. 400 warships from 12 different alien species traveled to New Geneva. Each ship was bigger than anything humans had ever built. Each ship carried weapons that could destroy cities in seconds. Admiral Kethrix commanded the fleet from his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. He was a Vorn, a species that looked like giant insects standing on 2 legs. His shell was dark blue, and his eyes were like black marbles. He had fought in 100 battles and never lost. He expected this mission to be easy. He expected the humans to surrender before he even fired a shot. The fleet arrived in orbit around New Geneva. The planet looked small and fragile below them. Admiral Kethrix ordered his communications officer to send a message to the surface. The message was simple: surrender now or die. But before New Geneva could respond, a different message arrived. It came from Earth, the human homeworld, far away across the galaxy. The message was short. The Tempest is coming. You have 72 hours to leave. This is your only warning. Admiral Kethrix read the message 3 times. Then he laughed so hard that his officers became worried. 1 ship? The humans were sending 1 ship against 400? This was not a battle. This was a joke. The Confederacy knew about human military power. Their spies had studied Earth for years. Humans had maybe 30 warships, all of them small and weak. They had 1 experimental ship called the Tempest, but it was just a prototype. It was nothing to fear. 72 hours passed. The Confederacy fleet did not move. They waited in orbit, their weapons pointed at New Geneva, ready to burn the planet if the humans tried anything stupid. Then the Tempest arrived. She came out of faster-than-light travel, like a monster rising from the deep ocean. Every sensor on every Confederacy ship screamed warnings at the same time. Officers jumped from their seats. Alarms filled the air with noise. Admiral Kethrix stared at his display screen and felt something he had not felt in 200 years. He felt fear. The Tempest was 3 kilometers long. Her hull was black as space itself. Strange weapons covered every surface, weapons that the Confederacy's computers could not identify. Her engines burned with blue-white fire so bright that it hurt to look at directly. She moved through space like a predator, smooth and silent and deadly. This was not what the intelligence reports had described. This was not a prototype or an experiment. This was something new, something terrible, something that made the Confederacy's greatest warships look like toys. On the bridge of the Tempest, Captain Helena Reyes watched the enemy fleet on her display screen. She was 53 years old, with silver hair and cold gray eyes. She had served in Earth's military for 30 years. She had trained for this moment for 10 of those years. She was ready. Her crew worked around her in quiet efficiency. They were the best Earth had to offer. Engineers, weapons officers, pilots, and soldiers. Every single one of them had volunteered for this mission. Every single one of them knew they might not come home. "Captain," her communications officer said, "the enemy flagship is hailing us." Put them through. Admiral Kethrix's face appeared on the main screen. His mandibles clicked together as he spoke. The translation software turned his alien language into English. Human vessel, you are outnumbered 400 to 1. Surrender now, and your crew will receive quick deaths. If you resist, we will take you apart slowly and broadcast your suffering to every human world. Captain Reyes smiled. It was not a friendly smile. It was the smile of someone who knew a secret. Admiral, she said calmly, I am going to give you one last chance to leave. Not because you deserve mercy, but because I would prefer to end this without killing. Take your fleet and go home. Tell your masters that Earth is no longer afraid. The alien admiral's mandibles clattered with laughter. You prefer? You are one ship against 400? I am one Hurricane-class warship, Captain Reyes replied, and you have no idea what that means. You have no idea what we have built. You have no idea what we are capable of. She ended the transmission before he could respond. Lieutenant Chen, she said to her weapons officer, sound general quarters. Prepare all weapons for combat. Yes, Captain. The lights on the bridge changed from white to red. A calm voice announced battle stations throughout the ship. Crew members ran to their positions. Weapon systems powered up, with a deep humming sound that vibrated through the deck plates. Captain Reyes looked at the 400 enemy ships on her display. They were forming into battle lines, preparing to attack. They thought they knew what was about to happen. They thought they were going to destroy one foolish human ship that had come to die for nothing. They were so very wrong. All hands, Captain Reyes announced over the ship's speakers. This is the captain. For 20 years, the Confederacy has treated humanity like slaves. They have taken our resources. They have killed our people. They have told us that we are nothing. She paused, letting her words sink in. Today we show them what we really are. Today we teach them why Earth does not bow. Today we show them why they should have been afraid from the very beginning. She looked at her crew, at their determined faces, at the fire in their eyes. The Tempest had been born from pain and anger. 20 years ago, when humans first met the Confederacy, they had hoped for friendship. They had dreamed of learning from older civilizations, of sharing knowledge and culture, of joining a great galactic community. Instead, they found masters who wanted slaves. The Confederacy gave humanity two choices: pay tribute and obey, or be destroyed. Earth's leaders looked at the alien warships in their sky. They looked at weapons that could crack planets like eggs. They looked at their own small ships and primitive technology. They had no choice. They surrendered. For 20 years, humanity paid. They sent money, minerals, food, and technology to their alien overlords. Human colonies on distant worlds were treated like property. Humans who complained disappeared. Humans who resisted died. The Confederacy laughed at human suffering and demanded more. But while humanity bowed in public, something different happened in secret. The United Earth Defense Initiative was created in hidden bases deep underground and in stations floating in the darkness between stars. The greatest scientists, engineers, and military minds on Earth came together with one goal: build something that could fight back. Build something that could win. They studied every piece of alien technology they could find. They bought some from black markets. They stole some from careless Confederacy officers. They reverse-engineered everything, learning how it worked, then figuring out how to make it better. The Confederacy had ruled for 9,000 years. Their technology was old and stable. They had stopped improving it long ago because they saw no need. Who would challenge them? Who could possibly threaten the masters of the galaxy? Humanity was different. Humans were hungry. Humans were angry. Humans were desperate, and desperate people do desperate things. The Hurricane-class warship project began 12 years before the Battle of New Geneva. Thousands of engineers worked on it. Millions of workers built the components in factories disguised as civilian facilities. Trillions of credits were secretly moved from tribute payments to fund the construction. It was the greatest secret in human history. The Tempest's armor was not normal metal. It was a material that existed in a strange state between solid and energy. When something hit it, the impact spread across the entire hull instead of breaking through at one point. A weapon that could punch through normal armor simply pushed the Tempest sideways instead. Her shields were even stranger. They bent space itself, creating a bubble around the ship where the normal rules did not apply. Energy beams curved away from her. Missiles lost their targets and flew off into empty space. The Confederacy's scientists would have said such technology was impossible. They would have been wrong. But the Tempest's weapons were what truly set her apart. The Confederacy used plasma weapons and kinetic cannons. These were powerful but simple. Point at enemy, fire, watch enemy explode. Humanity had taken a different path. The Tempest carried beam weapons that fired in frequencies the Confederacy could not even detect. Their shields were designed to stop plasma and metal. They were not designed to stop something they did not know existed. Her missiles carried warheads that did not explode. Instead, they broke apart matter at the molecular level. Anything they touched simply fell apart into dust. And deep in her core, the Tempest carried something called the hammer. The scientists who created the hammer had nightmares about it. The engineers who installed it refused to talk about their work. Only a few people in the entire human race knew what it really was. It was not just a weapon. It was a message. It was humanity's answer to 9,000 years of slavery and suffering. It was proof that if you push someone far enough, they will push back harder than you ever imagined. Captain Helena Reyes stood on her bridge and watched the Confederacy fleet move into attack formation. 400 ships, each one carrying enough firepower to destroy a city. The combined fleet had never been defeated. They had crushed rebellions, conquered worlds, and burned civilizations to ash. They had never faced a Hurricane-class warship. Captain, Lieutenant Chen reported, all weapons are online and ready. Shield generators at full power. The hammer is warming up. Good. Captain Reyes sat in her command chair. The leather was worn from years of use. She had spent thousands of hours in this seat, running simulations, preparing for this exact moment. What is the enemy doing? They are spreading out into a standard encirclement pattern. They want to surround us and hit us from all directions at once. Captain Reyes nodded. It was a good tactic against normal ships. Against the Tempest, it would just mean they died from more directions. Admiral Kethrix is hailing us again, the communications officer said. Ignore it. He has nothing to say that I want to hear. On the Confederacy flagship, Admiral Kethrix watched the human ship with growing unease. Something was wrong. The human captain should be afraid. She should be begging for mercy. Instead, she was ignoring his calls like he was nothing. His tactical officer approached nervously. Admiral, our sensors cannot get clear readings on the enemy vessel. The ship seems to change size every time we scan it. Our targeting computers cannot lock on. Then fire manually, Kethrix snapped. We have 400 ships. We do not need targeting computers to hit one enemy. Yes, Admiral. The order went out to the fleet. 400 warships prepared to fire. Plasma cannons charged with deadly energy. Missile tubes loaded with nuclear warheads. Kinetic accelerators spun up to maximum power. On the Tempest, Captain Reyes watched the energy build up on her sensors. She felt no fear. She felt only a cold, hard determination. All hands, she announced. The enemy is about to fire. Brace for impact and prepare to return fire on my command. The Confederacy fleet fired everything they had. Space itself seemed to catch fire. Plasma beams streaked toward the Tempest from every direction. Missiles flew in swarms so thick they blocked out the stars. Kinetic rounds traveled so fast they were invisible. The Tempest's shields flared bright blue as they bent space around the ship. Beams curved away. Kinetic rounds missed by meters that should have been direct hits. When the barrage ended, the Tempest was still there. Her shields were glowing from the strain, but she was completely undamaged. Admiral Kethrix stared at his display in disbelief. That was impossible. No ship could survive that kind of firepower. No ship could shrug off the combined attack of 400 warships. Captain Reyes smiled her cold smile. "Lieutenant Chen," she said calmly, "return fire. Show them what we can do." The Tempest weapons came alive, and the Confederacy learned what fear really meant. The first shot from the Tempest hit a Vorn destroyer called the Iron Claw. The ship did not explode. It did not break apart. It simply stopped existing. One moment it was there, a massive warship with 500 crew members on board. The next moment, there was nothing but empty space. No debris, no escape pods, no bodies, just nothing. Every officer in the Confederacy fleet saw it happen. Every sensor recorded it. Every mind tried to understand what they had just witnessed. They could not understand it. The Confederacy had been fighting wars for 9,000 years. They knew what weapons did. Plasma burned through armor. Missiles exploded and tore ships apart. Kinetic rounds punched holes through hulls. These were the rules of warfare. Everyone knew them. The Tempest did not follow the rules. Her second shot hit a carrier from the Kethrix species. Same result. The massive ship, bigger than a small city, simply vanished. 2,000 crew members gone in less than a second. No warning, no chance to escape, just instant annihilation. Panic spread through the fleet like a disease. Officers screamed into their communicators. Captains demanded orders from Admiral Kethrix. Some ships started to move without permission, trying to get away from the nightmare in front of them. The Tempest did not let them run. She moved through space like nothing the Confederacy had ever seen. Their warships were big and slow, designed for long sieges and overwhelming firepower. They turned like mountains and accelerated like sleeping giants. The Tempest danced between them like a blade in the dark. Her engines burned with impossible power. She changed direction faster than any ship her size should be able to move. The crew inside should have been crushed against the walls by the force. But human engineers had solved that problem. The internal dampeners kept them safe while the ship flew like a fighter instead of a battleship. Admiral Kethrix finally found his voice. "All ships, concentrate fire on the human vessel. Everything we have, fire now." The fleet responded. 398 ships turned their weapons on the Tempest and fired. The space around her became a storm of death. Plasma beams crossed in every direction. Missiles filled the void like angry bees. Kinetic rounds flew so fast they heated the vacuum. Captain Reyes did not flinch. Evasive pattern delta, point defense, free fire on incoming missiles. The Tempest began to move in ways that seemed impossible. She rolled and twisted, slipping between beams that should have hit her. Her shields bent space around her, making weapons miss by meters when they should have struck dead center. Her point defense guns fired thousands of times per second, shooting down missiles before they could get close. And while she dodged, she kept firing. Another ship vanished, then another, then 3 more in rapid succession. The Tempest was killing Confederacy warships faster than they could track. On the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, Admiral Kethrix watched his fleet die. 20 years of experience told him this was impossible. 9,000 years of history told him this could not be happening. But his eyes told him the truth. They were losing. They were losing badly. And there was nothing he could do to stop it. "Admiral," his tactical officer shouted, "the human ship is launching fighters." Kethrix spun to his display. The Tempest had opened her launch bays, and small craft were pouring out into space. These were not fighters like the Confederacy used. They were sleek and angular, shaped like arrowheads. Each one was controlled by an artificial intelligence capable of thinking faster than any living pilot. The human drones hit the Confederacy fighter squadrons like wolves attacking sheep. Confederacy fighters had living pilots. Living pilots needed time to think, time to react, time to make decisions. The human drones did not need time. Their AI brains processed information in microseconds. They could see an attack coming and dodge before the enemy pilot even pulled the trigger. Hundreds of Confederacy fighters died in the first minute. Then, hundreds more. The drone squadrons swept through the enemy formations, leaving nothing but debris and silence behind them. Lieutenant Chen looked up from his console. "Captain, we have destroyed 47 capital ships and approximately 2,000 fighters. Enemy fleet is showing signs of confusion. Several ships are attempting to flee." "Don't let them," Captain Reyes ordered. "If they escape, they warn others. We need to end this here." The Tempest accelerated toward the fleeing ships. Her weapons continued to fire, each shot erasing another vessel from existence. The alien crews had no time to abandon ship. They had no time to send final messages to their families. They simply ceased to exist. Some Confederacy captains tried to surrender. They broadcast messages of peace, begging for mercy. Captain Reyes ignored them. She had seen what the Confederacy did to human prisoners. She had read the reports from liberated colonies. She knew what kind of mercy these aliens offered. They would receive the same mercy they had given. The battle became a slaughter. The Confederacy fleet, once the most powerful force in the galaxy, was being destroyed by a single ship. Ships that had conquered worlds died without landing a single hit on their enemy. Officers, who had won dozens of battles, found themselves helpless against technology they could not understand. Admiral Kethrix watched his flagship's shields flicker under a near miss. The Tempest was getting closer. She was coming for him. "All ships," he broadcast, his voice shaking for the first time in 200 years. "Focus all fire on the human vessel. Every weapon, every missile, everything. Now!" The remaining ships obeyed. 250 warships fired simultaneously at the Tempest. The barrage was so intense that the sensors on New Geneva detected it from orbit as a new star appearing in the sky. The Tempest flew straight into the storm of fire. Her shields screamed under the assault. Warning lights appeared on Captain Reyes's display. Damage reports came in from all over the ship. A section of armor plating tore away. An auxiliary power generator exploded. 3 crew members died when their compartment was breached. But the Tempest kept coming. She emerged from the barrage with smoke trailing from her wounds, her black hull scarred and burned. But she was still flying. She was still fighting, and she was very, very angry. Captain Reyes looked at the damage reports. She looked at the names of the crew members who had died. She felt a cold fury building in her chest. "Lieutenant Chen," she said in a voice like ice, "warm up the hammer. It's time to end this." The hammer was humanity's darkest secret. Deep inside the Tempest, past layers of armor and security doors, there was a chamber that only 12 people in the entire human race knew existed. Inside that chamber, held by magnetic fields stronger than anything else on the ship, was a tiny piece of something that should not exist. The scientists called it a stabilized quantum singularity. That was a fancy name for something simple and terrifying. It was a piece of a dying universe, captured and contained through experiments that had killed hundreds of researchers before they got it right. When released, the singularity did not destroy things the way normal weapons did. It did not burn or explode or crush. It simply erased. Anything that touched it was pulled out of existence, dragged into somewhere else entirely. The matter did not go anywhere in this universe. It simply stopped being. The hammer had only been tested Once, the target was an uninhabited moon in a distant star system. When the test was finished, the moon was gone. Not destroyed, not broken apart. Gone. There was nothing left but empty space where a moon had once existed. Captain Helena Reyes knew what the hammer could do. She had seen the recordings of that test. She had watched a moon disappear like it had never existed. She understood that using this weapon was not just winning a battle. It was sending a message to the entire galaxy. The message was simple. Do not threaten humanity again, ever. Hammer is charged and ready, Captain, Lieutenant Chen reported. His voice was steady, but his hands were shaking slightly. He had seen the test recordings too. Target the center of the enemy formation. Maximum yield. On the Eternal Dominion, Admiral Kethrix saw the Tempest's bow begin to glow. At first, it was just a faint light, barely visible against the darkness of space. Then it grew brighter, and brighter still. Something was wrong. The light was not like any weapon the Admiral had ever seen. It did not pulse like a plasma cannon. It did not flicker like a missile launch. It was steady and growing, and it was a color that his eyes could not quite process. His tactical officer was staring at his sensors with a look of pure horror. Admiral, I am detecting an energy buildup unlike anything in our database. The readings they are impossible. No ship can generate that much power. What is it? Kethrix demanded. What kind of weapon is that? I do not know, Admiral. I have never seen anything like it. But if those readings are correct, the officer swallowed hard. We need to run. We need to run right now. Kethrix looked at his display. The Tempest was between his fleet and the nearest jump point. They could not escape in that direction. They would have to go around her, and that would take time. Time they might not have. All ships, scatter. Maximum speed. Get away from that weapon. But it was already too late. Captain Reyes watched the hammer reach full power. The glow at the Tempest's bow was now so bright that the viewing screens had to filter it down to protect the crew's eyes. The ship vibrated with contained energy. Fire, she said quietly. The hammer fired. It was not a beam. It was not a projectile. It was a tear in reality itself. A sphere of absolute darkness appeared in the center of the Confederacy fleet and began to expand. The sphere was not black like space. It was black like nothing. It was the absence of everything. The flagship Eternal Dominion was the first to be consumed. Admiral Kethrix had exactly 2 seconds to understand what was happening. He saw the sphere of nothing rushing toward him. He saw his crew screaming and running. He opened his mouth to give one final order. Then he was gone. The Eternal Dominion was gone. Every atom that had made up the ship and everyone on board was simply erased from existence. The sphere kept expanding. Cruisers vanished. Destroyers disappeared. Carriers were swallowed whole. Ships tried to flee, their engines burning at maximum power. But the sphere expanded faster than they could run. There was no escape. The crew of the Tempest watched in silence as 93 Confederacy warships were erased from existence in less than 30 seconds. When the sphere finally stopped expanding and collapsed in on itself, there was nothing left. No debris, no bodies, no evidence that those ships had ever existed, except for the hole in the enemy formation. Captain Reyes looked at the remaining enemy vessels. There were 167 ships left, all of them now desperately trying to put distance between themselves and the Tempest. They knew they could not win. Open a channel to the surviving ships, she ordered. All frequencies. Channel open, Captain. Captain Reyes stood from her command chair. Her image was broadcast to every surviving Confederacy vessel. Her face was calm, but her eyes were cold as space itself. This is Captain Helena Reyes of the United Earth Defense Force. Your fleet is defeated. Your admiral is dead. You have seen what our weapons can do. You cannot fight us, You cannot run from us. Your only choice now is surrender." She paused, letting her words sink in. "Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. Any ship that tries to flee will be destroyed. Any ship that fires on us will be destroyed. Any ship that does not comply within the next 5 minutes will be destroyed. There will be no more warnings." The bridge was silent. Every crew member watched the enemy ships on their displays. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, one by one, the Confederacy ships began to power down their weapons. Energy signatures dropped. Missile tubes closed. Shield generators went offline. The most powerful fleet in galactic history was surrendering to a single ship. Lieutenant Chen let out a breath he did not know he had been holding. "Captain, all enemy vessels are complying. No weapon signatures detected." Captain Reyes nodded slowly. The battle was over. They had won. But she did not feel victory. She felt tired. She felt sad. She thought about the nearly 250,000 aliens she had just killed. They had been enemies, yes. They had come to enslave a human world. But they had also been living beings, with families, and hopes, and fears. War was never clean. War was never simple. Even when you won, you lost something of yourself. "Send a message to Earth," she said quietly. "Tell them the Battle of New Geneva is over. The Confederacy fleet is destroyed. New Geneva is safe." She looked at the display one more time, at the empty space where so many ships had been. "And tell them to prepare for what comes next, because after today, nothing in this galaxy will ever be the same." The news spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. At first, no one believed it. The combined fleet of the Confederacy, 400 of the most powerful warships ever built, destroyed by a single human ship? Impossible. The reports had to be wrong. The sensors had to be malfunctioning. There had to be some explanation. But there was no other explanation. The survivors told their stories. The sensor recordings were analyzed and confirmed. The truth was undeniable. Humanity had built something terrible, and they had used it without hesitation. The Confederacy of 12 worlds began to fall apart. 3 species immediately withdrew from the alliance. They sent messages to Earth, asking for peace. They promised never to threaten human worlds again. They begged humanity to remember that they had never been the worst of the oppressors. 2 other species reached out in secret. They wanted treaties. They wanted protection. They had seen what the Tempest could do, and they wanted to be on the winning side when the next war came. The remaining 7 species screamed at each other in emergency meetings. They blamed each other for the disaster. They demanded answers. They searched desperately for some way to build weapons that could match what humanity had created. They found nothing. Humanity had taken a path that the elder races had never considered. While the Confederacy had spent 9,000 years perfecting the same old technologies, humans had created something completely new. The gap was too wide to close quickly. By the time the Confederacy could catch up, humanity would be even further ahead. On Earth, the response was complicated. There were celebrations, of course. For 20 years, humanity had lived under the boot of alien masters. They had paid tribute they could not afford. They had watched their people suffer and die. Now, finally, they had struck back. They had won. But not everyone celebrated. Captain Helena Reyes returned to Earth as a hero. Parades were held in her honor. Leaders wanted to shake her hand. Children wore costumes that looked like her uniform. She was the woman who had freed humanity from slavery. She did not feel like a hero. 3 months after the battle, she stood in a memorial garden on Earth. The garden was filled with walls covered in names. These were the names of every human who had died under Confederacy rule. 20 years of casualties, colony worlds that had been bombed, citizens who had disappeared, children who had been taken away. The Tempest had avenged them, but vengeance did not bring them back. Admiral Chen Wei found her there as the sun was setting. He was her superior officer, and one of the few people who understood what she was feeling. "You saved millions of lives," he said quietly. "The people of New Geneva are free because of you." "I killed 250,000 sentient beings," she replied. "I erased them from existence. They had families too, wives and husbands and children who will never see them again. They came to enslave and kill. They would have shown no mercy to New Geneva." "I know." She closed her eyes. "That is what makes this so hard. They deserve to lose. They deserve to be stopped. But that does not make what I did any less terrible." Admiral Chen Wei was silent for a moment. "The Confederacy is sending representatives. They want to negotiate." "What kind of negotiation?" "The kind where they admit we are their equals. The kind where our people are no longer treated as slaves. The kind where humanity takes its place among the powers of the galaxy." Helena opened her eyes and looked at the setting sun. "That is what we fought for." "Yes, but that is not all." Chen Wei turned to face her. "Some of the Confederacy members want to form alliances with us. They are afraid of the others. They want our protection. They want our weapons. They want to not be destroyed by our weapons. There is a difference." He paused. "What happened at New Geneva changed everything, Helena. Not just the military balance, the very idea of what humanity is. For 9,000 years, the elder races believed they were superior, that younger species existed to serve them. You shattered that belief in a single battle. One battle does not change 9,000 years of thinking. No, but it is a start. Over the next 10 years, everything changed. The Hurricane-class program expanded. Earth built 12 of the great warships, each one named after a natural disaster. Tempest, Avalanche, Tsunami, Inferno, Typhoon, Blizzard, Monsoon, Wildfire, Tremor, Cyclone, Maelstrom, and Cataclysm. Together, they were enough to destroy any fleet the Confederacy could assemble. No one even considered attacking humanity again. But Earth's true victory came not from weapons. Human worlds became places where refugees could find safety. Species fleeing persecution came to Earth and were welcomed. Ideas could be discussed freely. Innovation was encouraged instead of crushed. Where the Confederacy had ruled through fear, humanity offered something different. Partnership, cooperation, hope. One by one, worlds began to leave the Confederacy and join the new alliance forming around Earth. They did not come because they feared human weapons. They came because they believed in human ideals. Within a century, the Confederacy of 12 Worlds no longer existed. In its place stood the Galactic Commonwealth of Free Systems. Earth did not rule this new government. Humanity did not demand tribute or obedience. Every voice mattered. But in every system that joined the Commonwealth, there was a memorial to the Battle of New Geneva. Not to celebrate the killing, but to remember the moment when everything changed. The moment when one species stood up and refused to be slaves anymore. The inscription on each memorial was the same. The galaxy taught humanity that might makes right. Humanity learned that lesson. Then humanity chose to use that might to prove the lesson wrong. Captain Helena Reyes never commanded the Tempest again. She spent the rest of her life as an ambassador, helping to build the peace she had won through war. She traveled to 100 worlds and spoke to 1,000 species. She told them all the same thing. We did not fight to become what the Confederacy was. We fought to become something better. And we will keep fighting for that, not with weapons, but with words and ideas and hope. She died at the age of 91, surrounded by friends and family. Humans and aliens wept together at her funeral. She was buried in the same memorial garden where she had once stood feeling guilty and sad. Her gravestone was simple. It carried only her name and 2 lines. She unleashed the storm. She stayed to help rebuild. And across the galaxy, in every corner of the Commonwealth, her story was told and retold. The story of a captain who destroyed a fleet to save a world. The story of a woman who won a war, then spent the rest of her life winning the peace. The story of humanity's first great hero. The story of how Earth learned to fight. And the story of how Earth learned that fighting was never enough.